Anna from NHCSR here. I'm going to start sticking these field reports into the Serious Grower feed to give you some real-time reports from our extension specialists in New England, New York, and the Mid-Atlantic states. Look for links to resources from extension specialists in the show notes and pay close attention to where some of these reports are coming from because we're going to be covering a wide region. Reach out if you need help connecting with extension specialists wherever you are. We'll get you hooked up with experts in your area. Each of these field reports will start out with the most time-sensitive reports of what we are talking about and seeing on commercial farms, but we may dive a little deeper when we need to. I will take care to specify when I'm talking about tunnel-grown crops, but otherwise assume I'm talking about open culture. All right, top line reports for July 1st, 2026. Rising temperatures are raising concerns about ozone stress, and we are on the alert for heat-related flower loss in high tunnel tomatoes and cucumbers. If you are struggling with heat stress in tunnels, consider implementing shade cloth over your tunnels. 30% shade cloth is recommended, and the trade-offs in light reduction are almost always balanced out for the potential loss to heat stress during the height of the summer. And those shade cloths can be removed and put in place whenever you need them. Folks are continuing to see cucumber beetles, squash bug, and squash vine borer moving into squash and cucumber crops. Folks are continuing to see Colorado potato beetle infesting potato and eggplant crops. Folks continue to see cucumber beetles, squash bug, and squash vine borer moving into squash and cucumber crops. Folks growing brassica crops are seeing signs of swede midge in new areas. So if you are seeing strange blinding, strange weirdness that cannot be explained by any other mechanism, reach out to your local extension office and confirm or figure out whether or not that's swede midge causing your problems. Folks are still seeing Colorado potato beetle impacting potato and eggplant crops. And we are also continuing to see cucumber beetles, squash bug, and squash vine borer moving into squash and cucumber crops across the region. We're also hearing lots of reports of wilting plants from all across the region. A few folks have reported losing squash plants within a few weeks of transplant. Some have blamed wind whip that causes physical damage to the plant stem. This damage is sometimes severe enough that plants fail to thrive, but it also acts as an entry point for soil-borne pathogens like fusarium, which then manifests as a soft rotting at the soil surface. This is a pretty common soil pathogen, but folks who are seeing considerable losses should rotate out of cucurbits in that field for at least 3 to 5 years or select resistant varieties. Grafting varieties onto more vigorous rootstocks is an option, but the economics of that might not work out unless you're doing your own grafting. And once you start doing your own grafting, all bets are off. You're going to be grafting everything. But a few general comments about wilting that might help you in troubleshooting whatever's causing your problems. So if your cucumbers look sad at 2 p.m. on a 95-degree day, but look perfectly fine the next morning, they're probably just experiencing heat shock and recovering from it. Those leaves are losing moisture faster than the roots can pump that water up. If they recover overnight, they don't necessarily need more water, although you should definitely double, triple check your irrigation lines to make sure you're not blocking your water flow up somewhere. You can also provide those plants with some shade cloth to take off that stress during peak heat. On the other hand, sudden, permanent wilting of a vine in a small hole near the base of the stem that looks like it has sawdust coming out of it, so bug poop, frass, that might be squash vine borer. For home gardeners, I have seen folks out there with a razor blade removing the borer and burying that wounded stem in moist soil to encourage it to grow new roots. And that sounds like an interesting idea. I'd love to hear more about folks who are doing this and if they're successfully establishing new roots or maybe causing more problems than they're solving. Please let me know. There are several diseases that will start out as wilting symptoms before they progress into other symptoms. And one dead giveaway that it's a disease is if you're seeing these symptoms on one variety and not seeing them in another, because that variety might have a different level of susceptibility over the other one. If you notice one specific runner or section of the plant wilting while the rest looks okay and watering doesn't help, you might be dealing with bacterial wilt. This bacterial wilt is spread by striped cucumber beetle or spotted cucumber beetles. This bacterial wilt is spread by cucumber beetles, and the bacteria clog the plant's vascular system. So the test for this is to cut a wilted stem near the base and take those two pieces of stem and press them together and slowly pull them apart. And if you see a sticky sap-like white string stretching between them, it's probably bacterial wilt. Sometimes people will stick that cut end into a glass of water, and you might even see those bacterial streaming. It's like, actually, it's a biofilm. It's very cool stuff. Unfortunately, there's no cure for this plant once it's infected, so you will have to pull it out and replace it. Do your best to protect plants from cucumber beetles, but keep in mind that it only takes one beetle to introduce that disease pathogen to your plant. So, some limitations there, and sanitation practices that reduce inoculum on the farm are an equally important aspect to an integrated approach to management. Also remember that cucumbers and muskmelons, that's Cucumis sativas and Cucumis melo, are the most susceptible to bacterial wilts. So they have zero natural defense against the bacteria clogging up their vascular system. Crops like pumpkins and squash in the species Cucurbita pepo, Cucurbita maxima, and Cucurbita moschata, they all kind of range in their moderate level of susceptibility to bacterial wilt. And, most vigorously growing plants in those species can continue to thrive and produce fruit, even with a little bacterial wilt infection. It really varies. And watermelon, which is a completely different genus, Citrullus lanatus, they are completely resistant to bacterial wilt. So even if cucumber beetles are feeding on a watermelon vine, that plant's vascular structure naturally prevents that pathogen. It's Erwinia trichophilia from multiplying or causing wilt. So keep that in mind. Some other curiosities that experts are talking about, 3 curiosities for this week. Here's a new one I was unfamiliar with, purple carrot seed moth. Unbelievably named Depressaria, depressana. Are we really? Okay. Well, it's a new one in our area, but it has been reported in parts of New York and Maine. Its native range is pretty widespread, Europe, Asia, North Africa, but it was first reported in North America in 2008. So it sounds like the first reports came from Wisconsin. So I'm linking to a quick report from Wisconsin about purple carrot seed moth, but here's a quote from that resource. These insects get their name due to their association with the flowers of the plants in the carrot family, the umbellifera. So we're talking about carrots, ammi, dill, things like that. The caterpillars of purple carrot seed moth are small, about 3/8 inch long when mature, but dozens can feed on a single umbel. The caterpillars are dark green or reddish with many conspicuous white spots on their bodies. In addition to feeding on the flowers, the caterpillars tie together floral parts with silken webbing, which can make herbs like dill unusable. Eventually, the caterpillars pupate within the webbing and emerge as adult moths a short time later. So that's from that resource. Go take a look if you want to learn more. Our second curiosity of the week, diamondback moth damage is being reported on cabbage and other brassica plantings under row cover. Remember, if you're seeing this early and you have those plants protected by row cover, it is highly likely that the eggs or larvae were present on the plants before they even went to the field. It's possible that they were deposited in the tunnel where you were starting your transplant. So management remains focused on scouting and timely application of BT or entrust, but this did leave us scratching our heads to how this kind of thing could happen in northern regions because diamondback moth are not supposed to overwinter this far north. However, the species does not display a true diapause in the way that other species in the pest complex do. Typically, they just stop development in the fall and hunker down for the winter in some protected life stage. Diamondback moth doesn't do this. They just go through a quiescence when it's not warm enough for them to reproduce. So it is very possible that diamondback moth are overwintering in tunnels. Oh, please reach out if you think you are seeing signs of a very early season infestation that would indicate a local overwintering population, because I want to hear from you. For those of you in high residue, organic, or no-till systems, we are hearing reports of severe earwig damage to carrot seedlings and other crops. These insects have been reported to cause damage in potato foliage, greens, a broad range of plant families. Management can be tricky because we don't know a lot about this group, but current advice suggests reducing residue levels where possible, like organic matter level dews where possible, allowing the topsoil to dry out if possible. Another possibility is to use an insect bait that is registered for use in vegetables. Seduce and Sluggo Plus. The plus on that Sluggo is important here. They both contain the gut poison spinosad. So spinosad is a gut poison, so it's kind of, thought of as being low impact on non-target insects, but it is broad spectrum, so it should have some activity on any insect that eats this bait. We'll do a little more digging into this, but know that the research on pest control is very limited here. Finally, we're also hearing early alternaria development on cantaloupes in the region, so keep your scouting programs active as the weather patterns remain conducive to disease progression. And that is it for today. But please reach out if you have any questions or suggestions about what you'd like to hear more about, and thank you so much for listening.